But last name's Van Arman. It's a weird Dutch thing, like Van Gogh.
Oh, Van Arman. I'm sorry. In the digital space in particular?
Actually, no, I'm not.
I think there's a lot. And is it Pindar or Pinder?
Pindar.
Pindar. Sweet. Well, everyone, welcome to day 3 of Crypto Art Week. I am your host, Lady Phoenix, joined by my co-host Coldy and artist Pindar Van Arman. We're here doing a studio visit with him, and we're super excited and super stoked to have him. He does brilliant work with paint and robots, and he's going to tell you all about it. Pindar, I'll let you take it away if you want to just tell folks a little bit about yourself and your practice and how you came to working with robots.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's sort of, well, hey, thanks everyone for being here. And I always love showing people around my studio. I'm even halfway through a painting. So, I mean, I'll even show you the process. We can even see what we can go into this painting that I'm doing in a collaboration with another artist. I'll answer any questions. And maybe you guys, Lady Phoenix and Cody, can like relay any questions to me because I don't have the YouTube live feed going. But I'm in my studio. This is, it's taken me 15 years to get to something this big. I've been painting for 15 years and I got started. Well, I've been painting my whole life, but I got started in robotic art. And this is something I've gone really deep in for a while now. When I started my family and all of a sudden I was painting every day. And back in the 2000s, I was selling on eBay. And then I started a family and it went from painting every day to just enjoying my family and being with my family a lot more. And I realized I was only painting on the weekends. And I had this idea, if I just need a printer that prints the backgrounds and if a painting takes 12 hours or 2 days, wouldn't it be great if the printer would take 95% of that away, just do it under my direction. And then I finish it in an hour, after I've changed the diapers, the family's asleep and I get my quiet time. And then it just snowballed from there, to use a cliche. And every couple months, every 6 months, every time I needed it, I'd write another algorithm to make the printer a little better. And then at first it was slowly getting, a little more advanced. And then I think around 2008, there was this error on one of my robots. It dropped the brush and I was off at work and it dropped the brush and I came home and I see that the printer was dumb. It just kept on going through the motions of making a painting. And it just bothered me. I was like, this is just a printer, I've already added a bunch of AI, but it should have known. I thought to myself, it should have known that I dropped the brush and wasn't doing anything. And I was just watching it go through the motions. And that's when I had the idea of adding a camera. And I was like, I'm not going to give my robot predefined strokes anymore. I'm going to give it a picture, an image for it to think about. And I'm going to have it take pictures of the canvas constantly. And then it's got one algorithm. And this is my favorite algorithm, my favorite piece of AI. It's like, its algorithm is make that canvas look more like what's in its memory constantly. And it does this every 10 strokes, every 100 strokes. After a day of painting, it might take a step back and evaluate the whole canvas. And it's like, is this going in the right direction? And then, and it keeps this memory, in its memory, it just has an image of what it's working towards. And I play with that image using AI. And so, nowadays, a painting takes 2 to 3 days. And it's always chasing an image. And it's this feedback loop that it does. It's like an artist now. It's like it takes a picture. It takes a step back, analyzes the canvases, I've got dozens of AI algorithms, including deep learning. I got CNN style transfer is a popular one. Of course, I've got generative adversarial networks in there dreaming up new faces. And all these algorithms are fighting with each other to just make paintings. And I just run them constantly. Like I was saying, it's like I just paused it. It would be running right now, but we started this visit. So that's it. That's how it. So it started as a printer. Was a printer for a couple years, but a printer with a paintbrush. I would pick up paints and print brushstroke by brushstroke. But then it became something more. And I don't know when. I don't know when exactly it became as complex as it is now. But it's just been this building on it for years and years and years.
I love that backstory. That's a beautiful backstory, because I have a family and I know the way it happens, right? At a certain point, you had all the time in the day to do this thing. And then now all that quote unquote free time is now, responsibility ridden. And how do you keep that creativity going? So I love the problem solving mentality that got you into this. That's beautiful backstory. I love it.
Yeah, it's how do you keep on making art? Because I mean, look at how many great artists are. Everyone is an artist in some sort. It seems like in their teenage years, and then life takes over. So how do you keep on making art? You got to find a way.
That's beautiful. I love it.
So
I'll kind of just really quickly. I first found your art. God, it must have been close to 2 years ago. I don't know when I got that Eric piece. It was one of my first pieces that I bought, and this piece, I'll drop it in the chat. It's a really fascinating piece, and what I love about it is the dripping paint and like the imperfections of it, and it's something, and it's the robot doing it. And when I throw it up on my Crypto Voxels gallery, it's super huge, and I love checking it out. Phoenix, take over for 1 minute, please. My doorbell is ringing. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll tell everyone about that piece if they're looking at it in the chat. That's a fun one because that's like, the algorithm was simple. I only put I put the primary colors out, and it's a portrait of a gentleman in Switzerland. And it's a portrait. All my portraits are commissions. I don't remember the last time I painted a portrait of someone I didn't know or have a sitting with. I sort of prefer that. Like, I'm drawn. I'm just drawn to the relationship I make with the painters. But anyway, I just put out cyan, yellow, and magenta paint in different opacities. And I had a picture of the gentleman. His name is, Eric. And he, and the robot just kept on adding paint, a little paint here and there to try and get that image out. And it would take a picture of the canvas in the beginning, and then it looked at the primary colors I laid out for, and it picked the most appropriate. Built it up over layers and layers and layers, tens and thousands of strokes, and it dripped. And I tried to make the paint, translucent, so that in the, as the robot was taking pictures, it had the ability to add more and more and more, and every layer would just change it a little bit. So that was I did several portraits like that. And I did portraits like that for 3 or 4 months. And that's typically how I work. When I find a nice new algorithm, I work with it for 3 or 4 months until I decide that I want to make it a little more complicated.
How does one get in touch with you if they want a self-portrait?
They usually find me on my website, cloudpainter.com. And I don't know why I've been calling I don't call I've only named one robot, and I've had about 15. And I only named one. It's autonomous. But I typically just name projects. And Cloud Painter, the idea, it's cloudpainter.com. You can get in touch with me there. And that's how people usually find me. And the idea is, I guess the idea behind that is I want eventually my robots to be so sophisticated that I'm not giving them subject matter. Like right now, I'm deciding. It's like, I'm a portrait artist. I work with the patron. I get a portrait. We decide the subject. And ultimately, I'm the artist because I'm giving the robot the art. And directing.
You're also deciding what the final outcome of that work is.
Yeah, that's actually I'll get into that, Lady Phoenix. That's the algorithm I can't figure out. That the algorithm is, the ultimate algorithm is, when is something done? When's it finished? And that's
the artist algorithm too, without robots, just so you know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how many times my brain has told me stop. I don't stop, and I destroy a piece, and it's like a missed opportunity. And I look back at pictures because everything's a time lapse. I was like, oh, I wish I stopped yesterday. It was perfect, and now I got this piece of junk. But yeah, and to go back, Cloud Painter, I wanted, the goal is, and I don't think this will happen because I think, a robot's only going to be making art when a robot has something to tell us, emotionally. And so when will this happen? When my robot is so advanced that it's no longer my robot, it's itself, and that won't be my software. I'm not nowhere near, I don't think anyone's near that level of software engineering for, who knows, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But when that happens, it'll be interesting art. I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in our lifetime. But even short of that, I want it to start picking its own subject matter. So I always have this fantasy of putting it somewhere it can look out the window into the clouds, and then grabbing and using its imagination, which it has. It has imagination with generative adversarial networks and pulling things out of the clouds and just painting them. And that's sort of the goal for it.
How do you suppose that we will put, so, you know, one of the sort of big challenges in AI is, you know, putting emotion, if you will, or consciousness into the machines. Do you think it's a matter of you uploading your consciousness to the cloud and then that consciousness being put into the machine, and the machine and you sort of coming together to make the future artwork?
You know, I didn't think of it that way. That's probably going to be the first people that do it are going to find a way to augment their own consciousness. And so it's going to be like a cyborg-like thing. I don't know how it's going to happen. I think it's just going to happen because, I mean, I got with all my children, I'm talking about my family. I just see them come, you know, I just see the emotions come from nothing slowly into something. And I think I have this gut feeling that you make a system complex enough, it'll just emerge. It'll just be there.
Right.
And that being said, I gave a 20-year time frame. I think, you know, a computer as complex as a human brain isn't 20 years off. It might be, actually, I have no idea. I don't know what I'm talking about here.
I mean, you're guesstimating, and that's totally okay. You know, this isn't, you know, going down in any white paper anywhere. We don't have to be right. You know, this is a chat between buddies in a community of people who support all types of theories. And so I think it's important just to throw your wildest ideas and guesstimations out there to, you know, spur conversation.
Yeah, well, here's I'll tell you this thing that I think, and this doesn't make me unique, but separates me from most of the AI artists. And you'll see on I as well as being an AI artist, I'm the biggest AI art fanboy. You can see that's my collection on the wall. I got even more that I can't even get on the wall, and you'll recognize some of them. But you know, when I get an NFT, the first thing I do is print it big and put it on my wall, so it's just sitting here. So here, most AI artists, they go into something like a generative, a generative adversarial network, and they really go deep and make beautiful things. Or they'll try, you know, like it used to be style transfer used to be very interesting, and everyone's familiar with that. You take a picture, you take a Van Gogh, for example, and you redo the picture as a Van Gogh. But the way I see it, and what I've been working on recently, is this creative mind idea where I've already told you about the feedback loops. I'm taking pictures with my robots constantly, and it's taking a step back and it's thinking and it's reflecting. And there isn't just one algorithm. There's actually, right now, there's more than 24 algorithms that are fighting with each other. And I'll show you some code behind it. It's like, you know, I have one simple algorithm that's just worried about contrast. That's it. And it's always saying, hey, there's no contrast, there's no contrast, there's no contrast. And it has a volume. And the worse the contrast gets, or you know, like it disappears from the canvas, the louder that volume gets. It's like, let me take control of the brush. I need to add contrast. More complex, I have a style transfer algorithm constantly running saying, hey, you know, this is what I'm sort of imagining and I want to do this. And imagine 24 of these algorithms all screaming for control of the brush. And every 100 strokes, the robot rechecks all its algorithms, and it usually stays on the one that's on, but every so often one of these alternate algorithms gets enough control that it takes over, and then the robot changes direction. And I think that's how human creativity is. And it's by no means, you know, my idea. This comes from Minsky's Society of Minds. Anyone that's done computer science or AI, Marvin Minsky thought that the human brain wasn't a single mind. He thought that it was like thousands of independent agents. And this is very demonstrable. And there's lots of examples of this. In our heads, we have 100, who knows how many algorithms, all fighting for control. And when there's a difficult task, we have different algorithms telling us to do different things. And the one that makes the most sense wins out. And then we follow that algorithm. I'll give you a quick demo if you want to see one. One is to show you how you have two things happening in your head. Try and look across, try and look to the left of the room and slowly track your eyes from left to right across the room, without moving your head. And what's going to happen is your eyes are going to jump. They're going to jump from spot to spot to spot to spot. They don't know how to move. They don't simply know how to move across the room. But then if you take your finger and focus on your finger and then move your finger like this, your eyes are going to track it perfectly. And that's an example of two algorithms, and one took over. When the one that could track took over, it took over. So for anything we do as simple as this, we all have multiple algorithms, and it's just a matter of which one take over. And that's what I'm trying to build into this creative mind. And I think when someone does solve general AI. It's going to be, they've put a lot of these algorithms together, and, like hundreds of neural networks, thousands of simple algorithms, like, just a tracking algorithm. This isn't a neural network. It's just this mechanical tracking thing happening. And I think intelligence will emerge. I can't wait till, I said 20 years, but I think 5 years. Among friends, in 5 years, we're going to see this. Someone's going to have an emotional machine soon. And I can't wait to see it. And I can't wait to see the art it makes, because the art it makes is going to be, it just might be like, what the hell are we doing here on this planet? And then all of a sudden we're not alone, right? It's better than finding aliens or meeting aliens. It would just be.
I think we probably are the alien emotional machines that some other society said the same thing you're saying now, and then here we are, human beings or beings.
Yeah. So, and that's why I love AI art, because I can't think of anything more interesting than like exploring that. It's like our own minds and our own creativity, and why we do what we do and why we create.
Would you show us your robots? Speaking of which.
Yeah, sure. I'll give a quick panorama so you guys see that, and then we can even start running a quick panorama. That's my AI art. Well, a lot of AI art, a lot of NFTs, but also some originals. I'm spinning this thing around. There we go. That's a cabinet. I have just robot parts. Over here, I have where I work on my robots. There's a couple in process. One of them is actually a big project. The white one's a big project I have at a children's hospital. We're going to install it in a children's hospital so kids can use it and do some art therapy.
Wow.
How cool is that, right? That's like
amazing.
That's an amazing project. That's actually has to happen in 2 weeks. Okay. And then here we come to like sort of the corner where I just have endless portraits, and there's the live robot waiting to do another couple brush strokes. And that's like basically the quick panorama studio tour.
And this is your converted garage, you were saying?
What's that?
This is your converted garage space?
No, I used to be in a garage. My studio has always been, has long been a garage, but no, for COVID, I was mentioning I had to move back into my garage.
Okay.
Because right now I'm in another project I'm working on. I'm pretty large space, and we had to close it down so that we, because I guess I'm in Texas right now, and Texas closed down for a couple weeks. Although I think we were the only factory to actually close down. Everywhere else just kept on going. All right, let me see if I can switch cameras to, what do we got here? Oh, this will be cool. Here, I got this. There's that switched well, okay. And then you see if I can start the robot up. It's doing a portrait right now. There you go. And you'll see the portrait. You'll, we haven't announced this to anyone, but you'll see a rose in there. And this is a collaboration I'm doing with probably one of the biggest collaborators in the crypto art space, Super Rare Roses. And we've been working on this for a while now, and it's been painting for about 2 days now. So the robot is just working away.
This is so badass, Pindar. This is just,
man. Oh man, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
This is a really emotional work for both of us. This is like, I don't know if you guys know the story behind Super Rare Roses. I don't know if I can do it justice, but I, like everyone, have always been, I've been on Super Rare forever. And Roses was one of the early ones. He used to start putting roses out. I got a couple of his works, and I didn't realize the significance behind it, but they're a memoriam to his sister, and he's going to do 150 of them. And I'm just like, I'm so flattered. And he always says honored to work with me, but I'm honored that he picked me as one of the people to do one of his, one of these 150 pieces as he's been putting together for years. And so so this is like an important piece for me. We're putting a lot into it. But thanks. You want here? I'm going to give you guys a dizzying view if we can. So there's a camera on there. Let's see what it looks like from the camera's view. This might give people motion sickness. All right, let's see. But every set of strokes, it's going to take a step back. It's going to go back, and it's going to get a quick look and take a snapshot of the image. It'll happen any second now. No, we're just going to get dizzy. I think I should put it right. Oh, there you go. Now it takes a quick snapshot, and then it's off. And now it's analyzing what it did in that snapshot. I'll take you to something that looks more human. it doesn't, I say when artists, reflect, you take a step back and reflect. This thing just takes a quick snapshot. So, and then in these, I think right now it's on like 13,000 brush strokes working away. And you can see all the other paintings in the background, constantly running. My favorite part of the day is I think I'm one of my, is I leave it, I definitely run it overnight. I don't run it all day because sometimes the computer is running. But I run it every night, and I love coming back into the studio and seeing what it did that night. And then it's sort of like, and it's ready to get some direction from me. And at that point, I give it direction, and then either let it paint for the rest of the day or let it calculate. Whatever. It always changes, and I'm never sure what direction it's going to go in. It's always, I don't know. That's the fun part about it. And also, another cool thing about this is I had, similar to writer's block, I always get artist block. Like, what am I going to do next? When I get artist block, I just let it run and do stuff and something. And then eventually I see something that captures my attention. I'm like, okay, we'll work from here. And then we change direction to follow it. So I can show you. I can also, I said I'd show you some of the code. So I think I can share screens. I can show you what it's thinking, what's going on in its head.
Yeah, we're set up. You can share the screen.
I see share screen. It's going to get a little meta because, there we go. Is it sharing my screen?
It is.
Cool. All right, so here's a lot of the files that it's thinking. This is just the basic picture. And then I have these massive folders. It's always, oh, by the way, here's like an earlier portrait we did with Roses himself. This is not the, oh yeah, there's a time lapse of the portrait I did with Zach. And so this is, I always take pictures because it's always analyzing itself. And I save those pictures so I can see every step of the way. But that was a representational. For his sister, we are going into a, let's see, where is it? It'll be Rose's collab. We're going into a more abstract, and you can see some of the stuff it does. I ran for example, we did a representational until this point, and then it got a little boring. So I have the simple algorithm that's called Horovacui, and it saw this space. I don't know if you can see my cursor. It saw this space, and it's like, that's kind of a boring space. So I had one of his roses queued up. And then on this side, I have this other algorithm I love, which takes half the face and runs it through a GAN and makes it more abstract. So here it's like fighting with itself, coming up with some new designs, and then executing them. And I also, every time it makes a brush stroke, I see the brush strokes. You can see that here. And these are ways I keep track of what's going on. Oh, here's the, this is interesting. I was telling you about, it looks for differences. These blue are areas that need repair. So this is like a heat map. So when it's like doing this analysis, it looks at the blue areas and realizes that that's areas that need editing. They aren't the way they should be. So the brushstroke will concentrate on the brighter areas in these images. Oh, cool. We have a time lapse. Let's see, I can show you a time lapse. But you can see it's constantly taking, yeah, this would be a time lapse. It's been going for days. And so I have pictures of every step. 13th, and you can see the images just slowly appear. That's cool. I love making the paint too wet so it drips, because part of that is the robot tries to correct those drips, and it adds this, like, all generative art is looking for a way to add a little randomness, and my randomness comes from the actual canvas. The image goes wrong on the canvas.
Was that something? One of the other pieces I got from you recently, was that your son? I think it might have been. It was the three-headed.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Was
that a mistake that turned into like a beautiful thing, or what was that?
I ran that through. Let me see if I can find that. Where would that be? Archives. Give me a second. I'm not sure I'll find that very quickly.
It doesn't matter. I was just curious if that was something that the algorithm like messed up on and you went with it, or if that was planned.
No, that was like over the course of several days. Here, I can get it real quick. Over the course of several days, it just started with a picture and kept on reimagining it. and show everyone because there's a nice animation on it.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah, it's 18,384 strokes. And there you go. Coldie's the owner. So this is a portrait that started off as a simple picture of him. He sat in front of the robot for a photo shoot. And then the robot took several pictures of him and then just started painting one of the photos. You'll see like when it starts a simple photo, but then it saw something else. And actually the contrasting algorithm popped in and said that it wanted to have more contrast. So then it just started fighting with itself. There's a lot of GANs in this one, generative adversarial networks. There's 4 faces, 4 pictures will run through a generative adversarial network. And you guys have seen these like, latent space, animations. It picks some pictures out of the latent space and just painted it. Like it says, 18,384 brushstrokes. I forget how many days. Oh, I got details here. These are nerdy details. 4 reference photos, like I was mentioning, 4 photos of him, 24 algorithms. I was telling you about those feedback loops. It took a step back. It took a picture of the canvas and took a step back 2,298 times and used that to make 18,000 brushstrokes. I think there was like 5 or 6 different stages in this where the robot changed the direction of what it was trying to paint 5 or 6 times. And that's what came up in the end.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for that. That's another thing. Like as a collector, you buy a piece of art sometimes just off of how the emotional thing it hits you. But I've really loved chatting with you because I literally have no idea what the story is or the process, and getting to know the artist. And this is for everybody. Like when you're interested in a piece of art and you buy it, you really should reach out to the artist because you learn so much more. And half the time, your mind of like what it took them to make it could be completely different. So Pindar, like getting to know you through your art has been awesome because
thanks, Coldie.
I mean, you love to share, and then I love learning, and because of that, it's just like the next things I see from you, I understand a little bit more, and then when you do something different, it makes me even more curious. Like, well, where's he going now? So it's a beautiful relationship that crypto art is making with like artists and collectors. And
yeah, no. Yeah, totally. And that might be one of the reasons I love portraits because, I do a portrait with someone and actually, admittedly, it makes it hard to work in the crypto art sphere. It's not like, crypto art lends itself to, you put the NFT out and it sells based on itself, right? But like portraits, there's a little bit of a challenge because I was like, hey, I accept portrait commissions, works great in the fiat world. People like I take 50% down. And then like when it's complete, 50%, but that doesn't really work on super rare, which is the only place I'm currently selling. I'm actually, anyone out there, reach out to me if you have an idea of how to do this, because I'm struggling with how do I accept portrait commissions and then to start the portrait commission, work with whoever it is, get to know them, have fun doing the portrait, take input. Like, I'm working on this one with Zach from Super Rare, and there's all this back and forth. It takes weeks. And every portrait, a really successful portrait, that's what I love. I love, I guess that's why my portrait concentrate on people I get to meet or know. And it's really important to me to like, have the sitting. But that being said, that doesn't lend itself to NFTs because sort of NFTs, you're buying a finished product. I don't know how to sell an unfinished product as an NFT. Async art, maybe big news. I haven't announced it yet, but I got the email. I got accepted into Async art.
Oh, congratulations! That's awesome.
Yeah, they're good people over there, so that's awesome.
There must be a way to do it there, right? Can I add layers afterwards? I don't know.
Sure.
I'm gonna look into it. If someone's done that before, that'd be great. But the first piece I'm gonna release is this one I just did with Artur, the CEO of Somnium Space. We had a great time making a portrait all weekend. And we're thinking about how to like, here's the problem I have. The other problem I have with portraits is when I make a portrait with someone, I want to share it with the general public, right? I want to make these portraits beautiful enough that someone like you, Coldie, likes it and you're like, okay, I want to grab that, even though it's a portrait of my son, right? But at the same time, the only way I can get models is if someone that wants the portrait themselves gives me the pictures or has it sitting with me. So I have this like weird thing because I really like one of ones. That's important.
You know what, Pindar? That's a super good question for Jason Bailey, who's the moderator of the next panel. It's actually a generative art panel. So if you want to like hang out and like be a part of that panel and ask some of your questions and lend some of your expertise and wisdom, you know, knowledge base to the community. That could be tight.
Sure. I mean, yeah, definitely. They always been a fan of Jason's.
Yeah, it's Robbie, Mario, Helena. It's all your friends in the AI generative space.
Oh, yeah, you got here. We can go over it. You got right there is the Helena. There's the Klingman. Robbie mentioned he prefers his stuff say digital. So I used to have a printout of his, but I don't think he liked it. So, oh, hey, what's up?
Oh, party time.
Oh, look at
that. Yeah, we've got all our friends here. So Jason, really good to see you. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of this. You have a lot of folks who really appreciate you and your wisdom and your leadership and your scholarship. So thank you very, very kindly for being on this call. I would say we're big fans, but you know, it's beyond fandom. You just have a lot of people here who greatly respect you. So it's an honor to meet you and have you on this call. And I'm stoked to welcome you all to Crypto Art Week. Did we lose?
Is Matt Kane on here?
Change the view. Oh, hey, there we are. Yeah, super. I think we're just waiting on
Matt Kane.
We're waiting on Matt and Robbie.
Okay. Let's make sure we can still add them in when they show up. We'll be fine.
Yeah, so listen, hey, this is awesome. Good to meet you, Jason. Helena, we've talked a lot before.
Mario. Hi, Helena.
So looks like this is a crypto art panel.
Here's Matt.
What's that?
So here's Matt. So we were doing a studio visit with Pindar right before this, and he had a lot of great questions and insights around generative art. He had, you know, Helena up on the wall and some other folks, and I said, well, you know, why don't you just hang out? We're about to invite all your buddies, like people in the same space. Do you want to hang out and be a part of the panel? And he said, sure. So I wanted to check in with you guys and see if that was also cool.
Yeah, cool. More the merrier, for sure.
Awesome. What up, Matt? Good to see you, buddy. Oh, I think it's getting plugged in. Hey, Mario, good to see you. Thank you for being on.
Can you hear me already?
Yeah,
because
I'm looking for my
Helena,
camera. Your artwork is beautiful. Okay. Great to meet you. Thanks for being on.
Hey.
This is awesome.
Mario.
Wow, this happened real fast. All of a sudden, there's all these people on here.
It's a total party.
It's a Brady Bunch.
AI Gen Art party.
Before I'm gonna let you guys do your thing, but before you guys get going, I just want to give a special thanks to all of you guys. I know we have an international crowd here, so there's a lot of orchestration, and I appreciate you guys all, you know, making this work. I know we're still waiting on Robbie, but it means a lot to me. You got that we all got this group together. I think I literally collect everybody here, and you know, and including Jason. I have one of your Samogons.
Yeah, super duper rare.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'm a fanboy of all you guys. So and gals, you know. So from my heart, thank you for joining. It means a lot, and I can't wait to get under the hood and listen to you guys. And I won't be part of this. I'm gonna peace out, but I'll be listening and in the chat. So I'm
cool.
honored.
Yeah. Well, thank you to you both for organizing this. I mean, it's events like these that keep the crypto community alive, right? And especially during COVID when everybody's locked in and at home, right? So it's great to see everybody pitching in and doing their part. I was actually chatting with some of the folks on the panel, you know, an hour or so ago, saying that I'd be the wrong person to organize something like this because I'm so disorganized. So thanks to you all for organizing and getting it out there.
Yeah, and this was really, you know, a project of the heart. Coldy and I were just sitting around chatting, and we were like, yeah, we should do this. We want to do this. Okay, we're doing this, you know? And so it was for us to very, like, we should just do this, you know, like house party style. And so thanks for all of your patience as we've tried to, again, like coordinate everyone from around the world. Do you guys just want to say for the audience where you guys are broadcasting from? So I'm in Northern California.
Sure, yeah, I'm in just outside of Boston, about an hour outside of Boston.
New Jersey.
Munich, Germany.
Chicago.
Heart of Texas.
Right on.
There's Matt. Hey.
So we're still waiting on Robbie. I kind of feel like we should maybe get started, or how do you guys feel?
Yeah, Robbie's usually a little fashionably late, so
Yeah.
I'm
I was
reaching,
gonna
I'm
say
reaching
that,
out.
but you said it, Jason. So we'll
yeah,
just
no, I think I'm
expect
allowed.
him
I'm
to-
allowed to say it.
Yeah.
So we'll intro him last. We'll start maybe with some intros, and then kick it into some Q&A and hopefully some lively discussion.
Excellent. And I'll be in the background. I'll be invisible, but I'll be there in case of any admin needs, to support any way that I can, and to let Robbie into the space.
And I'm gonna stop out. So thanks everybody. Have a great chat, and I'll
Yep.
see you on the other side.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks, Goldie.
See you later.
All right, so hey, welcome everybody to the generative art panel. We're going to talk, I think, today a bit about generative art. I was thinking maybe generative art for sort of the first half of the hour, and then some questions around crypto art and what crypto art's been like for these generative artists in the second half of the hour. So for folks that don't know me, I'm Jason Bailey. I go by Art Gnome. I refer to myself as sort of an art nerd. I studied studio art and art history and then got a master's in digital art, but generally think of myself as sort of like a failed artist. So I spend most of my time and energy writing about other artists and trying to support other artists in this space. Good to see that Mario's got his drink ready. I've got mine as well. How's
Not
Mario?
fair.
Hey, there's Robbie.
Oh,
So yeah, why don't I gave a brief introduction of myself. Why don't we kick it off with intros of all the other folks. I'll start with, I always like to put Helena on the spot first, ladies first. So Helena, maybe an intro and
yeah.
a little bit about what kind of work you do would be great.
Okay. So I was born in Russia. I lived in Israel for a while, and I ended up in U.S., New Jersey. I have a degree in computer science from Moscow State University of Civil Engineering. As an artist, I consider myself self-taught mostly, but over the course of life, I took so many credit courses from various fine art educational institutions that it's sort of like made into do-it-yourself degree in fine arts. Being part of Bell Labs, I was allowed to code in many languages for many systems, starting from servers, cloud, and IoT devices. And as an artist, I've been as eclectic as my kind of like software background. I did like fashion design. I did some food styling, food photography. And for the last 3 years, I work mostly with AI systems, both for my consulting gigs as well as my art projects. And these days, it's like my claim to fame or my niche is me training exclusively on my own art and being like drawing, sketches, and photography. But this year being like so strange and so weird, I sort of dedicated most of my time to making artist books. I started end of last year. I did this book of Genesis. That's like, yeah, some of you like have it, and I published it end of last year. I almost immediately sold it and sold it out, and then the second book was this one. So it's again Commedia Erudita, which was debuted this October at NVIDIA GTC conference. They are part of the AI art gallery. So, and new projects are coming up with this team here. Second AI coloring book with Robbie, Jason, Mario, and Anna Riedler. And the second collaboration book is like really interesting as well. It's Gen to Gen, where I work with amazing Dmitry Chernyak and Sofia Garcia. So the idea is I took few thousands of images generative images from Dmitry, and trained a few models on them, and we sort of like decided it's worth having a book around it. So yeah, and one more kind of like interesting stuff, since all the book publishing requires a lot of soft proofing, I started literally cutting them out and making collages. And that's like my labor of love these days. Yeah, that's, this is like exclusively, cut out from the book of Genesis. And
Okay,
I
great.
just recently made an NFT, I tokenized it. So along with the book. So yeah, that's pretty much about me.
No, those are great. I definitely want to come back to what it means to train a model with your own material, later on in the conversation. And I expect everybody involved with the AI coloring book to pump it here. So I'm going to go in clockwise order. So I think at least on my screen, that puts Robbie next.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Robbie Barrett. I'm an artist. I worked with AI a lot in the past. I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to keep doing. But yeah, I'm from West Virginia. I'm 21. I worked in Silicon Valley for a few years. For 2 years, I worked at NVIDIA and then at a research lab in Stanford. And that's, I was working like with AI then for stuff like self-driving cars or for medicine. But I mean, the first things that I ever did with AI were to make art with it as an artist's tool. And I think that working in Silicon Valley really sort of made me realize that I don't want to use it for anything else. And that I'm not going to be like a, technical worker. I'm really an artist. I think that sort of accelerated that thought process. So last year I went to art school in France for a year, and I live in Paris now. I had a show with this French painter, Renan Barreau, and it was a bit funny because our names are really similar, but we had sort of a confrontation at the beginning. It was a confrontation, and it turned into a collaboration about, how a painter works, the process of a painter, of a traditional artist, versus the process of, a new media. I hate to call it new media, but an artist working with technology like me. So yeah, so that's I've been living in France ever since. I've been making a lot of landscapes recently. Not so much pieces about AI, but I've been making pieces more just about digital artifacts, stuff that I think is cool, like like how it looks like when you look at like a 3D object from the side, or like just digital phenomenons like Z fighting, when you have two 3D objects that have like a face on the exact same values. Your GPU doesn't really know how to handle that, and you'll get these cool patterns. So I've been using AI with that a lot to sort of make these digital artifacts a little bit less obvious that they're digital artifacts, and like seeing how those would look like as part of a landscape or something. But yeah, I mean, not to get too into it. But yeah, so I live in Paris now. I'm working right now on some sort of more installation based like video sculpture stuff. Because I think that really, to investigate AI or digital stuff, you can't really just do it with a single image. I kind of want to have more installations of stuff that like runs live. Yeah, but I mean, that's just a general overview. I do some stuff with fashion too. I just collaborated with Acne Studios on their fall winter 20 season, and we made a collection together. But yeah, sorry if that's a little bit of a scattered introduction. I didn't really have
great. That's
a
great,
plan.
given that the audience is, I think, largely crypto-oriented people. It's like a crypto week thing. Robbie was also the first to have work tokenized on Super Rare. So folks may know him as Dr. Beef within crypto circles, which I think you now go by Videodrome. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't go. It's just my Twitter handle. But
yeah. So we can't call you Videodrome.
I mean, if you really want, Jason, you get the pass.
Nice. All right. So thanks, Robbie, for the intro. And then on to my friend Matt Kane. if you want to introduce yourself, and maybe even, I know a lot of people have been talking about the recent sale that you had that kind of made a lot of the news. Maybe touch on that a little bit in your intro to help put some context around, you for some of the folks that may have read about it.
Oh, sure. So my name is Matt Kane. I'm an artist. My professional career really began in 2004 as an oil painter. I was represented by a gallery in Chicago, and Nathan Gallery. And I did that for like 3 years. But then I don't know, I had some life changes that needed to happen. So I moved from the Chicago area to Seattle, where I became a web engineer. I taught myself how to code quite on the job, just to avoid, going back to my first job in Seattle, which was a stocker, stocking groceries and Whole Foods. So it was kind of, learn to code and during that time, I kind of like, I had earlier ideas about wanting to create my own software, like, because my roots was really as a traditional oil painter. And I always promised myself if I ever became a digital artist, I would create my own software, just like I stretched my own canvases. I cut my own wood, ground my own pigments one summer. I wanted to create my own software if that ever happened. So after 7 years in the web development industry, I kind of found myself with available time in front of me to commit myself to that. And so I've been creating my own digital art studio. The original purpose was for me to basically create a digital studio where I could write algorithms that would fast track and supercharge what I was wanting to do in my own mind and what I understood as far as like just traditional art studio processes of layering materials. And so that uses a processing library, and that led me into more like becoming more of a severe Java programmer as well. And so, yeah, I've been sort of doing that the last since 2014. And in 2017, I saw an article that talked about putting art on the blockchain, and that was very intriguing to me. It talked about royalties and proven provenance, and I understood these things. I understood, like, because I had been working at that point for 3 years, creating my own software, but I had no market. I knew, like, I had been in traditional galleries, and I knew they wouldn't be interested in what I was creating, but I was still creating it because that was my vision. That was what was important. But anyway, I learned about art on blockchain 2 weeks before CryptoPunks began. So when I searched for like the galleries that I expected to find, they weren't there yet. They weren't there for a year. And then I watched the space develop for a year, and before joining in and starting to mint. And so I've been minting on Super Rare and Async ever since. And one of my more recent, my most recent sale, in fact, was to Token Angels for my my async art piece that took Bitcoin price volatility, and it synchronized each layer of the 24-layer artwork to 24 hours of Bitcoin price volatility. And so that updates daily now at volatility.art. It was really a beautiful thing for me, because I was able to take, those 7 years of web development experience, and actually put that to use within my fine art practice. And so it kind of like really strung everything together for me.
Cool, very cool. Mario, why don't we start with an intro for you?
Okay. Well, yes, I'm a self-taught artist, just like Helena. And well, I think I call myself an artist since about 10 years, or I dare to call myself. I think.
What did you call yourself before?
Oh, I tried many things. I think before I called myself an artist, I called myself a computational artisan. And I think I actually borrowed that from Jared Tarbell's, like I think he did the same. And I only realized at some point that it's too complicated. It takes too much explaining, and it also gives people the wrong idea. So, and before that, I did many different things. Well, I think let's start with my psychology, because I think so. I'm curious. I am very easily bored, and I like to figure out how things work. And at the same time, I have a big problem with authority and people telling me how things work. So I was never made for education. So I did not really go to any art school or other kind of like after the regular school, because yeah, I always thought I know I can figure it out myself, and that's what I did. So I started in advertising as a copywriter. That's kind of was my first and only job, actually. So but it was great. It was great because it was where people were creative, and well, I knew that I didn't know shit. So, and there were really amazing people who got me some ideas how business and how these things work. And yeah, and then I quit that job at some point and became freelance graphic designer. Was lucky because that was 1992 or 3, and that was when techno started in Germany. And that was perfect because also Photoshop 3.0 was there, and I could start doing kind of weird filter graphics with Photoshop. And in the end, they didn't care because it just needed to be printed and I could experiment around. Then motion graphics came up because there was After Effects, and suddenly people could do video and put it on TV without having like a kind of a super expensive machinery. So I learned that. Then the internet came along, so I learned how to do websites. Then I had this long phase of Flash, right? So maybe we come to that. And and all the time I was using code to create kind of, because I'm lazy and I'm not good with my hands, so I always wrote code to produce my output. I mean, in the end, we all know it takes longer to actually write the code because you could do it quicker by hand, but it's much more fun that way. And in the end, yeah. And I always, but in the end, like kind of with this mixture, artist was always kind of what I'm actually am. But as I said, like I like to figure out how things work. So one of the big things I try to figure out is how art works, and especially how becoming an artist works. And because I skipped the part of the art school, I kind of tried to make up my own theories. But yeah, I'm here, it worked. And now I'm, and the last part is, of course, and that when I started as a teenager with my Commodore C64, I had this epiphany that a digital bitmap, whatever size, can show every possible image, right? If you just pick the right combination of pixels. So of course I wrote that program that goes through every possible image and never kind of gets anywhere. But that idea got stuck, that theoretically I could write a program that will create any possible image. And that's what I have been trying until now to perfect, right? And fortunately, about, well, what was it, like 6 years ago, finally AI came and kind of avoided going through all the trash, through all the noise, and going right to the interesting pictures that are, for our eyes, something to look at, like that promise to be not just noise. And so since then, I'm exploring this whole field of, classification first and then generation, with all the arsenal of whatever comes up every week in new tools. And
cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about not going to art school. I spent half my life in art school and I still don't know what art or artists are about. So I think you're no further ahead or behind than anyone else in figuring that out. It's
kind of good to make contacts, I guess, and like to learn the right lingo. So that's kind of two important things to have in this field. Like in a certain field, not in crypto, that's different, but we get to that.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that. It's the last thing I'll say is it's interesting how much, I saw your tweet the other day about how Adobe's entering the AI market. And And I hadn't really made the connection that how much history you have with Adobe going back to early Photoshop. And obviously I first learned about you through the Flash years, as an elder statesman myself, in the early 2000s, late 90s. Pindar, thanks for joining us. Would you like to do a quick intro for folks, just a little bit about who you are?
I'll make it quick. Because I think a lot of people are coming off an hour-long studio tour. But first of all, this is super exciting because, as you guys can see, as well as being an AI artist, I'm an AI fanboy, and half of your artwork is on the wall. Everyone can see their stuff. Mario, I was just telling you about yours. I bought it on Rarible for, I think, for 2 or 3 ETH, and then I got $5,000 of Rari for it. The best piece of artwork.
That was like perfect timing you had there.
I know. So anyway, quick. I've been an artist my whole life, painter my whole life. About 15 years ago, I had a family. My family started, and all of a sudden I found instead of painting every day, I was painting on weekends. And so I set out to build robots to help me be studio assistants, help me paint. And in the beginning, they were just printers. For like 3 years, they were just printers. And then I added cameras to them. So this is like something that'll resonate with Robbie's corrections. I added cameras to them so that they could watch the canvas. And as the images were developing, they would like have feedback loops. So as artist Paul Clay said, an artist makes marks, takes a step back, makes more marks. I started having these robots make marks, pause, take a step back, see what's going on in the canvas. And from your writings, Jason, everyone wants a little randomness in their generative art. My randomness comes from the mistakes and the paint dripping down the canvas. And so I can't believe this, but I think I'm coming up on my 2000th painting. It's just constantly running, constantly painting with the robots, constantly working with them. That's my art. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I'll pick up right from one of those comments, Pindar. I think I'm not going to assume that folks that are watching necessarily know what generative art is. And I think a lot of times when I talk to people that maybe aren't familiar with it, they assume that because there's code involved or robots or models or something like that, that maybe it's not so creative, or there isn't room for the human in that process. So it's sort of, this is the beginning of the end for human art, and these algorithms that execute the same every way or every time, produce this work on their own. I think maybe start the conversation around what is generative art, and how what's the human's role and how important is that role? I mean, I obviously have my own assumptions, and is there anything even to this idea that in generative art that somehow the code or the robot or the model is the thing that's doing, the sort of the interesting art part. And I'll let anyone who wants to take the first stab at that is more than welcome to. And if no one takes a stab, I'll keep talking.
I'll go.
Yeah, let's hear it, Matt.
So very simply, I see generative art as a set of instructions that when performed, there's some variables that get exposed to some sort of a data set, even if it's randomness. I consider randomness a data set. So those variables might, when the set of instructions is being performed, it gets exposed to this data set, which changes the results, the output. And it doesn't have to be coded. It can be a human who's following instructions, and the randomness is like, how much lead is in the pencil, and oops, the hand, moved. So that's sort of like my very brief, definition of how I see generative art.
No, that's great.
Can you guys hear me? Can I add to that?
Yeah, please do, Robbie.
Yeah, so I think that some very interesting, probably early generative art is the work of Saul LeWitt, where he was, I guess, analog generative artist. He didn't work with computers, but he worked with rule cards. He would make a set of instruction on a card for wall drawings, and then people would just follow these instructions. They'd say stuff like make 10 dots on the wall and then connect these dots with lines. So they'd execute these instructions, and of course, since making 10 dots is not exact, there would be different variations. You could make, almost an infinite amount of wall drawings with one rule card. And Saul LeWitt considered the rule card to be, the work of art that he created. But obviously, we wouldn't, it's not what you're looking at on the wall. So I think that that's important. I think that generative artists make systems that make images, and then use these systems to make images. But I don't think that necessarily an image from a generative system. I mean, I think that the generative system itself is the artwork a lot of times, because it's what the artist creates. And I mean, visuals can sort of just be like a side effect of the system or the output of the system. But I don't really know where I was going with this, but yeah, I think that generative artists are artists who make systems to make images, and whether that's on the computer or whether that's not on the computer, it doesn't matter. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything that creative about these systems. I think it's just sort of another artist's tool. I think that it's just the tool of our choices. It just happens to be systems.
So the creativity comes from the human developing the system, not necessarily from the system. In your opinion, it's interesting that you would use the Saul LeWitt example, and Matt kind of talked about, and Pindar, I think to some degree, where the variation or the randomness can come in on the analog side. But I don't know, Mario or Helena, do you think there's a fair amount of randomness that comes in on the programming or model building side as well? Or is it all to be found in the analog?
Helena, you want, or may I?
No, you go.
May I also give my take quickly first on because I mean, of course, I agree with all the other points, but I see it also generative art as a system that explores a certain possibility space, and that can be within images, or it can be in another system. But so you build this mechanism, maybe out of code, and that has certain limitations which allow this to cut through a certain slice of all possible images, if you talk about images. And and yeah, usually the parameters are the variables that control how much it can explore that space. And of course, by coding it, you set its freedom, and depending on how you are coding. I mean, when I'm coding, I usually have just a rough idea, and the thing emerges under my hands. And of course, your influences in that moment, you could call random parameters or non-random parameters. But of course, once the mechanism is in place, it is really just the parameters and variables that control the possibility and the variety of the system. So I value generative art systems, of course, also by kind of not by the single image they produce, but by the kind of the variation they produce. Because that example of what was it, 100,000 bowls of oatmeal, because that's what lots of generative art produces. So yes, you can do 100,000 different things, but they are all the same. So I'm interested in the kind of the unusual stuff within the system. And that is, of course, something you control, like you shape the parameters. But yeah, in the end, the controlling factor for the output is the randomness that comes in, which you then can shape and control the variability and the repertoire of your system.
Got it. Yeah, I think, is Mario's screen frozen for anyone else?
Yeah.
Well, your screens are frozen for me.
Okay, well,
it's fixed now.
It was a particularly awesome freeze.
Oh no, was it ugly? Like open mouth or something?
No, it was good. It was good. So yeah, it sounds like you maybe agree that it's the system, that is key, but it's the particularly unusual or interesting or surprising outputs of the system that make the system interesting, or at least help to make the system interesting. Is that fair?
Yeah, and of course, the ideal thing is if you know what you put in, but you still get unexpected results, which is the most difficult part. I mean, and then there are different approaches, right? You might want to have more control, or you want to have more surprise, and you have to kind of balance that. But yeah, it's Well, that's always different. So, well, I always like to get surprised by the machines, which is why I build these systems. But that surprise is this diminishing, gives you diminishing returns. The more you know, the less you get surprised. That's so. I always envy people who come freshly to this and who can thoroughly enjoy this, because I'm getting bored often. That's the problem.
Yeah, yeah, it keeps you interested. If it keeps you interested, there's a good chance it'll keep others interested too, right? So it's part of the gauge. Helena, so I know when I think of you, and you mentioned this in your intro, that you do a fair amount of integrating analog work as part of the training process. Do you see? I mean, how much does it matter to you that there are surprises or randomness in the work? How much does that sort of motivate you in your process? And do you see it coming mostly from the analog side or from the digital side, or both?
So I actually got into AI art because I like surprises. So I like this randomness. I mean, and in terms of like training data sets, I mean, of course, if it's like one homogeneous data set like lettuce leaves, and you won't get humans out of it. So I mean, in that sense, you kind of control what you will get out. But again, the series that I produced, Latentuses, they sort of took me by surprise. So yeah, and that's why, again, I don't call my art being particularly generative, because again, I work on my data sets, but generative doesn't mean it's generative doesn't mean that it's kind of like should be like geometric or something. So that's why, again, I mean, most of generative artists, like traditional, that they produce, I mean, it's a lot of like similarity, but like there are like some people like Manola or Dmitry that succeed even with generative systems to produce some organic results. And this is what I value in generative, being it AI or just purely generative art.
Yeah, I think when art's algorithm driven or moves more and more towards being algorithm driven, the potential for it to all start to look the same goes up, which to me makes it all the more impressive when individual artists that work in the generative art space can develop something that's so distinctly their own, right? Because you can pull yourself out of that gravity. One of the things I was going to ask about, so, I learned, I'm not a great programmer, but I learned to program through artists open sourcing their code. And I'm curious now that we're starting to see a nascent market for some of this work, if generative artists are going to continue to be as generous with open sourcing their code and their models now that we're seeing a sort of a market develop, or if you just have thoughts in general on whether or not open sourcing is even something that people need to do or should do, or I mean, I've seen some tweets from you, Mario, that suggest that other people in other professions aren't expected to necessarily give away their stuff for free. I don't know if you want to share any thoughts on open sourcing and what role, if any, you think it has in this space.
Well, anything I can say is, of course, kind of will be held against me. So no, of course, I'm.
That's good, though. I want to get to the portion of the talk where we start to get contentious.
No. So I mean, I definitely learned, like you, also a lot from open source and profit a lot from it. And I think I also did my kind of part of sharing and giving away for free. Problem is, I gave a lot of code and knowledge away for free in the flash time. So like for 10 years, I kind of shared constantly. And of course, now nobody cares about that because nobody can see it anymore. So, but in a way, I think I have kind of built up this karma kind of depot where I can now say, no, sorry, I do not share the code that creates my art, because that's like, I pretty much, I mean, I believe I'm relatively open with my processes, and I explain like what other libraries I use. And because I also believe it's the Jesus thing, where you rather teach somebody to fish than so they can give them a fish. So because in the end, like this, just like copy some code and run it will not create any kind of your personal art. It will just make you faster. So, and of course, if I kind of give the source code and my little tricks that I don't share, then, well, yes, you could kind of exactly copy my style. And well, most people would call you out for that, but there is enough gullible idiots out there who would pay for that, or who would hire that person. And in the end, only have so many ideas and things that I can do that well, I don't know, I don't want people to kind of just copy me. I want them to make their own thing. And I love it when people get inspired and say, oh yeah, I love that, and try to build it themselves, like to recreate it with their own means, because then it will look different and they will have learned something. And what was I going to say? I shouldn't have started with that whiskey.
Well,
Yeah.
we can come back to you. So I mean,
Maybe I can...
yeah. I mean, unless you have it, we can come back to you. Are there other folks that have thoughts on open sourcing? I mean, I don't want to get into the old story with how you got burned a bit, Robbie. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts.
I mean, I'm still a very huge believer in open source. The event that Jason is referring to is in 2018. A certain artist collective used code that I put on GitHub. I made a repository so that people could sort of like just mess around with GANs. I included some pre-trained networks that could make like portrait images. And I mean, I intended it as a starting point, and a lot of people have used it as such. Like a lot of artists have used it and, you know, done their own thing to it and done different things than I already did with it. Cause I mean, it's very basic. Like Bard Eonson is an example of an artist who's really done cool stuff with my repository. But yeah, this group called Obvious came and they did exactly what I already did in the examples section. They just ran one of my networks that I trained, and then they printed it out, and then they sold it, and they attached this awful narrative to it that it's the machine that's making the work. The machine's creative, almost like the machine's alive. And then they sold it at Christie's at auction for like $450,000. And I didn't get any like credit or attribution in that. So I mean, like my issue isn't that they used my code and that you know, I'm burnt that I didn't get money. It's just that they used my code to do exactly what I already did, and then just sold that, and then attached a narrative to it that is sort of like the opposite of what I'm investigating with my work. But I mean, the open source community really sort of did recognize that this was, you know, a bit not ideal, and I was, you know, it was a bit unfair, and the community really did come together and support me. So I mean, I hope that people don't take that what happened as, you know, quote unquote failing of open source. I don't view it as such at all. But yeah, so I mean, I haven't really done any open source stuff since then, but I really want to work on a set of open source lectures or like course material for traditional artists who want to incorporate AI into their practice. So I've been meaning to, I need to work on that. But yeah, I'm still definitely a very huge believer of open source, and yeah, that's it.
No, that's good to hear. I mean, it sounds like Mario is concerned. He's pro open source too, but his concern is that someone would do something similar to what happened to you, where people just come, grab the algorithm, tweak a few things, or don't tweak much at all, right? And then it's like a bummer. But I'm glad to see that you're still open to it. Pindar, Matt, any thoughts on open sourcing? Or...
I used to be open source, but my code is so ugly, it's embarrassing. So I don't really release it that much anymore. And it's more about the concept for me. It's more about the, when I say that honestly, it's like this thing's been growing for 15 years. And it's like this, you know, I describe it sometimes as a creative mind, where I keep on adding little modules of AI. Like I add something to add contrast, or I add something that'll, like, you know, fill in a vacuum and the canvas has a blank spot, you know, grab a picture and put something in there. And so I have all these little modules, and in and of themselves, each of the algorithms are really simple. So there's nothing profound about any single algorithm, but how they're strung together, and how the robot takes a picture of the canvas, takes a step back and goes through those 24, and they're all fighting for control of what to do next. I don't know if you can capture that in an open source project. That's there's nothing really great about that code. It's the concept that's interesting to me. But I wouldn't, and I share that, and I show people how I do that all the time. I think in my studio tour, I just showed a bunch of people all the code. So I wouldn't mind showing
Got it.
people.
So it's less about transparency and more about the perceived value of sharing the particular code itself in its current form.
Yeah.
To be fair, right?
Yeah, and it's a mess. It's organic, so it's not even organized. If I put a repository, I wouldn't probably be able to rebuild it from a repository. So I don't know how I could expect other people to.
Yeah, my code's messy too, so I can appreciate that. Matt, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I love open source. When I first started out with processing, open processing was like a go-to just to like pick apart and figure out how things worked. But then, I want to figure out like how to do it in my own way. That's really, that's what I'm most interested in. And what I would say about every artist on this panel is that more important than any open source software you could provide is you're providing a model of the kind of artist you are, and you're kind of proving that like this can be done. Whatever it is, each of you are doing is so unique that no one really did it before any of you. And so you're proving, hey, this can be done. And that model of artist that you're creating, that's more inspirational than any code that you could provide, in my opinion.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
That's very encouraging to hear. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's always what I hope also that happens. So, but yeah, I mean, there are plenty of requests and like people trying to give you like say, oh, but why don't you share? Because you are taking all the time. And well, I don't know. I think there's exactly different types of giving back.
Code shaming? Can we call it code shaming? That's what people call it.
But there's the thing. That's what I wanted to say. I think the problem that is missing is kind of like a what is it, like a code of honor in among kind of, let's say, generative artists to acknowledge that you have been using kind of blah 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 this as a starting point or this inspiration, because that's the thing, right? Like I mean, I recognize in a way, okay, so I'm a little arrogant and think like kind of, if you have done this for a long time, you constantly come to the point and say, oh yeah, I've done this before. And of course, then I realize, oh, somebody did it before, but I know kind of like my timeline and how I got the idea. And then I see these things popping up and I know where this came from. I mean, the spark, and then I don't see any kind of acknowledgement. And I see this with other people as well, not just myself. And that kind of pisses me off. I mean, I would just like get a thank you sometimes or an acknowledgement. But of course, that's also like there are different types of artists, right? There are the ones that
Mario, I'm definitely influenced by your work and your GANs. And I've done like entire series where I've imagined faces, but it's like I don't know how to attribute that. It's like obviously I talk to you on Twitter, but there's definitely times where I didn't need your code to be inspired by how you make black faces emerge out of nothing. And it's weird because as artists, I think I steal so much from so many people. I don't even know how to, like, I think, I don't know how to attribute all the people I take it from. Of course, if there's code you're taking, it's a little easier to say, like this is the actual code. But
yeah. And of course, also it's often like you don't take inspiration from a single person.
Exactly.
You follow those people and certain kind of trends emerge, or you see this and combine it with that. I still I don't know if I don't know. Not sure if when I see something that like a new project or I mean, I usually don't get inspired by other artists, but rather by, let's say, tools or by, well, some amazing AI research. And usually when I discover this, then the first thing I kind of do is kind of share, look at this. So except for very rare cases, or if I do my first piece with this, then I say I used this and this kind of tool for it. So not like, I don't know, maybe I have not always done that, but I try to be this way now. And that's kind of like my acknowledgement that I'm only standing on the shoulders of some other giants. And so that would be kind of, for me, the ideal thing. Like you come out with that first tweet, which gives you 1,000 likes, and you acknowledge in that tweet that you got inspired, not like 50 tweets down in like a conversation where nobody sees it anymore. That
Very,
would be
very
my
ignorant.
perfect world. But of course, that takes away kind of like, of course, we all like to feel like we're original. And I'm pretty sure I fail in that too. But in my ideal world, that would be the type of acknowledgement that you do. And then kind of the genealogy of that idea is kind of established.
I got you beat on that, Mario. I was so impressed with my painting robots, and this was before internet was like everywhere. And then after about 6 months, I found Harold Cohen, and I was like, oh, he beat me by 30
That's
years.
the constant thing, right?
And I got in touch with him, and he's great. And he's a super. We became friends. He was super supportive in the early days. But you know, it's funny. You think you're original, and then someone's beat you by 3 decades. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a clear difference between everyone's inspired by other people, and that's good and natural. And I think one of the things that's happening with crypto. So I mean, I started writing about crypto art and collecting pretty early on, like, you know, when it was fairly nascent, late 2017. And I think you can kind of put your own vision or morals into a space before it's fully, you know, nurtured of what you want it to be. And then some of the good things happen and some of the bad things happen. But what I'm starting to see a little bit in the crypto art world that's a little bit discouraging is that I think now that there's money on the other end of it, there's this race to just grab other people's stuff as fast as possible and mint it and try to see if you can get some money off of it, which is not very nuanced compared to, say, having multiple influences, right? But I think, so it might be a good time to pivot, because I know we've only got through the end of the hour, and I'd love to get everyone's thoughts on the crypto art community, what's been good about it, what's been bad about it, what things could make it better, you know, how did you come to it? You know, and I think it'd be good to have sort of a candid conversation around it. I mean, I'll start with something kind of positive. I think folks saw that I'm trying to auction off that work by Osinachi, you know, one of my favorite artists from Nigeria, to deal with the End SARS movement and the police brutality there. And folks kind of flocked around that, you know, which I thought was great. But I've also seen sort of a troubling trend where people realize if they can kind of manufacture drama and be at the center of any kind of drama, that they'll, you know, get more attention, and it can potentially lead to some more sales and things like that, which I think can be a little bit toxic. And I think, I don't think there's enough conversations about maybe what's not so good, because we're at a time where it's hard for artists to talk about that because they're selling work, right? Which is great, you know, which is another great thing about this space, that usually digital artists had a hard time selling work. But to the degree that you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear folks talk about, with sort of the remaining time, since it's a crypto art sort of semi-themed podcast, what's your experience been like? And to the degree that you can, touch on something positive, but maybe also something that's kind of frustrating, and you know, how maybe it could change. Is that your hand up, Robbie? Or
give me a minute. Maybe go with somebody else first.
Yeah. So whoever wants in, jump in.
Helena?
Yeah, we haven't heard from you for a little while.
Can of worms. No,
People are scared. So this is what I mean.
No. I can do the
positive crypto art.
Yeah, let me do the positive side, and then somebody else cover the negative side. So for me, getting into crypto, and it was like happened exactly 5 months ago, was really kind of a liberation from this being pigeonholed into AI artist thing in the style. I mean, because I started doing what I call non-pointillism, post-genism, book stuff, but it's still, you kind of expect it from purists, or how, like, from exhibition organizers, that you should fit this niche of AI art nicely. And it kind of like, because like Mario said, we mostly driven by boredom. It was like really, and then people started to come after you and kind of like breathing in your neck, essentially. And even if I work with my own data set and stuff, I mean, it's still sort of like started to look more or less the same. So, and that's why crypto world was liberating, because it was, I mean, it was loud and vulgar maybe, but it was in the essence the stuff that I'm doing. I mean, it's loud, it's bright, and it's collaged. And more than that, it comes with a nice narrative. So that's the whole package that, I mean, I found exhilarating. And then because my start was probably more or less successful, Then I kind of like got into it and sort of started posting, minting this and that and that. And then all of a sudden, and it was my, like what I call Picasso napkins. It's something that was meant to be sold for 1 Ether or something. But you also have your grand pieces. But people already, collectors expect that that's your price range. You kind of like stuck with $2 even if you bring your masterpiece. And Mario was smart. He started doing his, he minted his napkins on Rarible and put his masterpieces on super rare. I was not that far-sighted, but I learned. And now I sort of like kind of not compromising. It kind of slows my sales. I slowed myself as well. But you also need, crypto art comes, like any business, comes with its own business model, and you need to honor it. And that's why I kind of like very grateful to Zach, who kind of like very being pragmatic, kind of like puts the stops on you in terms of how you should manage yourself and your art. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, I think it does say something, and so I'll be negative for you. It does say something that people can't tell the difference between the masterpieces and the napkins, though, right? You would hope, I would think, as an artist, that people can appreciate, that it's not simply the trend of how much something has sold for that dictates whether or not your work sells for more or whether or not it's good. You would hope that people would be able to read into it, and so maybe a spin before someone else takes their turn on, how much does it even matter that something sells for a lot or not a lot? You brought up Zach. I had a quick chat with him on Twitter the other day that, does he, and I certainly don't, and I think he agreed with me, think that sales have anything to do with whether or not an artist or their work is good? I'm not so sure that it does, right? We see stuff sell that, we all kind of scratch our head on, and we see stuff lay dormant that doesn't sell. And
a lot of stuff not sold because it's not meant to this market. And then again, I should quote Mario because he said, we came with our own style. And like collectors, more or less, the main group of collectors is they're expecting a certain style. So you need to bring your own type of collectors with you, in a sense. And it started to happen. I kind of like see it from my own sales.
Got it. Anyone else want to take a kick at that?
Sure.
Mario?
So let me start with the things I love, because as I said, I like that this is, well, like now a 2-year-old, but it is still kind of this new territory where everything seems possible. And I always like that. There's anarchy. You kind of like, people can just whatever try out things, but already now kind of businesses are, and like, let's say the ties come on, and like there is more control now. So, but I like the openness of this. And of course, like in a way, crypto art came for myself in a way, like 10 years too late. That was the problem. So because like having worked as a digital artist forever, like you were always looking for some way to make a living with it without having to do stuff for clients, or kind of trying to sell your art in the analog way, which is so much more difficult. And then it came up, but for me it came up in a moment where I was just kind of making it in the real art world, in my standards. And then you see the early kind of, so the early super rare where they put kind of like a square piece of bitmap into an iPad and put it into an IKEA frame. And then they asked me if I wanted to join, and I said, do I want to show my art next to that IKEA frame? So at that point, like I was a snob and said, no, this is not yet. And of course, the whole way it's being sold, like loud as it can get. So crypto art is attention art. And you can see it like the majority of things blinks and just kind of is there. You have the scrolling page and every piece shouts, look at me. Oh, no, here. And I always wonder, like, who puts this stuff on their wall, right? Like kind of like, well, but maybe I'm too old because like, I don't know. So for me, this is all a lot of that is really about grabbing attention. So kind of that. So maybe that is more like pop music, right? So maybe it's an in-between thing, but still I saw the development and I realized, well, the thing has the market has matured and become a little bit more adult. So in my age, I can now dare to go in. So yeah, I first did some kind of under the radar testing on Rarible because I didn't want, I mean, in a way, I didn't want that they start shouting, oh, Mario came and now, so I didn't want anybody to notice me. So that's why what Helena calls the napkins. Actually, I don't think they're napkins.
they're
I
gorgeous.
put them in there in a way to kind of like people who know. I'm really happy for all the early pieces that people bought because there were some really nice ones that I really like a lot. And I particularly put the price low. So, well, those who see the value in it will hopefully have a lot of joy with it later on. So, but yeah, I didn't want to kind of, and I'm still not trying not to play the loud game, but it is very necessary. And I do not like that part, but it is unavoidable. So,
well, I like both of your napkins. So and probably have a few, but thanks for being critical because I think that's a big thing that's missing in the crypto art space. We have criticality in terms of some trolls going after people for personal reasons, but we don't have a lot of criticality in terms of talking about the work, or as much as at least I would like to see.
Oh,
but I don't, sorry, go ahead, Mara.
Sorry. Yeah, the one more thing. But the other thing is that, for example, like initially, like it's always like you see something new and there's this whole world evolving, like emerging with kind of young artists and like maybe people who have never been artists suddenly going into this because it's possible. And initially I thought everything is trash, but the more closer I look, you learn. So, and some of that stuff is growing on me. So there is some, well, maybe so-called trash art where there's a kind of a style developing, and it is very unique. And there are some, well, yeah, I collect some of that stuff, and because I can see, like, you try always to spot talent. Like there's kind of the majority just doing the copycat, like, oh, let's see, what is the current new blink frequency, or like the dominant color, what's the kind of primary color combination of the week. But there are some others who do their own thing, and well, I always try to spot them, and ideally, of course, you get it for the introductory price. But in the end, like, I mean, I think I haven't sold any of the pieces that I collect because I just collect them. I mean, I see also my collecting as a way to support more art that I want to see in the future. So, and less of the other stuff. But it's still interesting to see this whole evolving, like this.
Yeah.
System.
Yeah, no, it was good save because you were negative and then you kind of came back. Because I agree. I think there's one of the things crypto art adds is that there's many layers because it's a little less centralized. People can come in at different stages of their career and talent levels, and you can see people developing in interesting and neat ways, even when they're fairly new at it. But anyone else want to talk a bit? Yeah, go ahead, Robbie. Sorry, Robbie first,
Yeah,
and then Matt.
very quickly because I know. But I mean, like the one positive thing that I will say is that I know people on Super Rare who have said that Super Rare and selling work on the blockchain like this is sort of what makes living on their artwork possible. That they wouldn't be able to make a living or sell their artwork otherwise, just because the established art market and art world is just so inaccessible. But at the same time, I also do think that a lot of these blockchain platforms like Super Rare may be starting to recreate the the art world that they're trying to be separate from. I mean, like I see some videos, if I think it might have been when you sold one of my nude portraits, there were a few videos about that, and it's none of these videos are ever about the work. They're always just about the price. It's always just about the money. I mean, I'm seeing more and more work that's actually about money, or about the platform, a lot of like money fetishism that I'm not very comfortable with. There are lots of like, or I mean, like I've had like a few experiences with collectors on Super that have been very nice, but they're also like a very like toxic collectors or like just loud collectors. And I think that that sort of goes along with, a lot of the platform is loud. It's about selling. And I mean, I'm not really sure. I think that crypto art is still trying to find itself. I don't really know what exactly makes a piece crypto art. Is it just normal art that you sell on Super Rare? I mean, if I make a painting, it's not crypto art, but then if I sell it on Super Rare, is it all of a sudden crypto art? I don't know. And I mean, in that sense, it's almost a game. It's almost yeah, I mean, it's almost a game of like prices and collectors and bidding. And I mean, I tried to sort of like play the game by selling, like, I think I tokenized like 3 or 4 pieces after not really doing anything for 2 years. And I just sold them for about like $20 to friends because I thought it was really funny. Um, and, just seeing what happens and like how people react. I think that I sort of want to do maybe more stuff with that. But I think that one of the benefits that it has because it's more accessible is that it's not as serious as the traditional art world, and I think that that's something that's really special and that we need to hurry up and take advantage of before crypto art gets huge and becomes more serious and becomes less accessible just for anybody to play the game.
Yeah, as an old man, I thought that crypto art in the early days was a bit more creative, even though there were fewer people, because I think there was less at stake and less of a drive to make work to appeal to collectors. But part of what I've heard is that the community can be a little bit loud and money centric, but that there's a lot of cool new sort of no man's land sense to it too. I'm going to pass it over to you, Matt. Just as a heads up, I have to jump for another call. You guys I think we have some more time. You guys are welcome to continue on without me after if you choose to. But why don't we finish this out with Matt and Pindar on thoughts on crypto, and then I'll probably have to jump after that.
Sure. Well, I agree with Robbie that when people only talk about the price of something sold for, it's very frustrating and even isolating for an artist who is doing things for other reasons other than money. I was just fortunate enough to be quoted in a article on NBC News, and what I was most thrilled about is that it discussed royalties in crypto art to a great deal. And the things that I said was quoted in a mainstream article about how we're concerned about the welfare of the many over the profits of the few in crypto in general. And that was very exciting for me. And so what else I would say is exciting about crypto art is that everybody's getting to experiment and pioneer, and there's all of these economy layers that we can experiment with. Token Angels is going to get 21% of any profits on the next 210 NFTs I meant as part of that project going in, in the next 10 years, because I believe in this technology. And we were talking about open source, and the idea came to me, eventually we're going to have smart contracts that have little layers for us to say, hey, I want to give 1% of all my profits to the processing organization, or to Mario because I used his super fast blur algorithm once, and it was such a thrill to thank you for that a year ago when I met you. Yeah. But yeah, these are the things I'm most excited about. There's, and what I would say is that the things that don't excite you, that are kind of debilitating or isolating, don't participate in it. There's a lot of drama. You can opt out. You don't have to participate. And you can kind of we're all leaders in this, and we lead by example. And that's the most empowering thing about this, is knowing just by living your values, and demonstrating, your own quality of thought and consideration by who you collect and stuff. It's you can really go a long way in shaping this very quietly. And I think that's how the most important parts of crypto art are being shaped, is very quietly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can be hard sometimes to ignore some of the noise, you know, when it does get loud. But I do think you have a point there about the contrast of being quiet when it is such a loud space can sometimes draw more positive attention in a good way, you know. So, and I think of you as someone who's helping to do that within the community. So Pindar, yeah, your thoughts on how this is playing out and the sort of the community, the positives and the negatives.
I'll say something bad. I hate the analytics. And I think it's like, you know, I'm a portrait artist, and the big challenge I have is the portraits come to me by someone that wants a commission, and I can, you know, it's not like I put a piece of art there that can be bid on. The NFT space doesn't really work for me. And so it drives me crazy that there's sometimes some very interesting people. Like I just did a portrait of Artur from Somnium Space, and I want to do these interesting portraits. And I don't have the same price in my mind when someone's very interesting as opposed to when someone gives me, they want to do a family portrait. It's just something portrait artists deal with. And I don't like my prices being public, but that's the way it is. And everyone's always analyzing what the last sale was. As Robbie said, it's totally a money fetish. And like, you know, especially for someone that was in the space in super rare early, you know, you look at my average price, and of course I was selling stuff back in the day for $50, $100, and that affects me forever. And I think a lot of the artists that have been doing it for a while, you know, that affects it, and people actually, no one knows what art's valued at, no one. So, you know, the fact that you give them these analytics makes them think they're experts in something they're not. And I think it really makes artists think too much about the money. And that's when things go bad, right? I think too much about the money in the crypto space. In my physical painting space, I don't think about it at all. But on NFTs, that's all I think about, or not all I think about. I think about it way too much. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So, I mean, that might be a good spot for us to end on. I think I like what Matt said. It's easy to complain, I think, but it's really on, if you don't like what you see, it's on us individually to try to shape the space, right, into what we think it could be. Or to not participate, you know, in the aspects that we think are less desirable. And where this goes probably still is up for grabs. You know what I mean? I see some of the collectors, fairly new collectors on Twitter, angry that the work that they bought literally 2 weeks ago hasn't quadrupled or whatever. And I freak out a little bit because that starts to sound like a dystopian art world that's nothing like what I thought this was going to turn into. But you know, you only need to see those new collectors or speculators fail a few months in a row before I think other people will get it, that this is about supporting artists and interest in art. And if you're here for speculation, you're probably not going to, you know, come out of this, you know, too happy, right? So every reason in the world to support artists, and they've streamlined that and built a great community around it. And hopefully the less desirable parts of it will sort of take care of themselves. But I want to thank everybody for joining. I thought this was great conversation. I'm glad that we didn't just do a cheerleader session, and that we were able to go be a little bit more critical and dive in. And hopefully it was interesting for the audience as well. And thanks for having us all on.
Thank you guys very much. I want to leave you with one question that you can either answer here or on Twitter, but given everything you said, especially the kind of like pros and deltas, what do you think the responsibility of the future, let's call it crypto gallery or crypto gallerist is? Because I mean, it seems like in crypto art, people are doing it because they want to be independent. And like Robbie said, they want to, you know, be able to feed their families and everything off their art. And now they've been able to do that. There's some toxic behavior, but what is that defining role? And what Matt King pointed to is maybe that person or body or entity that defines or reinforces those good values, the new gallery system or the new gallerist.
Yeah, I mean, I have a thought that I'll share before I hop off, which is that for a while now, I've seen a lot of artists that are kind of angry that they haven't been accepted by Super Rare, for example. There's a whole half my tweets during the day are people pissed off at Super Rare because they haven't been accepted, and this is supposed to be decentralized and blah, blah, blah. But they can, as far as I know, they can hop on Rareable, right? So what they're really saying is, I want to be on Super Rare because that's where work sells for more or whatever, right? But my response is generally that we need more platforms, not fewer. Some people would disagree with me and say there isn't enough demand yet, but this whole thing needs to be about experimentation. So the more platforms, I think it's great that Async and Nifty Gateway and all these other places, and, you know, Maker's Place and obviously Known Origin, and, you know, the more of these we can have, the better. And I like when they kind of support each other and realize that going back years now to the early Rare AF, conferences, I said, we have to make the pizza before we worry about who's going to get the biggest slice, right? So we need all of these different experiments and these different platforms for folks coming out that serve different collectors and different artists. And the more radically different from each other they can be, instead of just also ran Me Too's, the more we can get to a version that'll serve these different audiences and what they want, both artists and collector wise. So I think this anger or frustration with any one platform because it doesn't meet everyone's needs is silly. If you're really that mad, look at the other platforms, or invest some time and energy in trying to build a new one out. There's a lot of communities that want to do that kind of work.
Or if you're really mad, go to OpenSea and just do it yourself.
Right?
Yeah, but that's kind of having the prestige, right? Like that's what the people want.
Well, it turns out, it's a hot button issue, and I know I have to jump, but it turns out that just minting your work, if no one was collecting your work before or interested in it before, tokenizing or minting your work in a vacuum doesn't magically make people come run with interest and want to buy it, right? So we talk about getting rid of gallerists and curators and all of that and decentralizing the same way we want to get rid of bankers, right? But the reason something like Super Rare works is because they do a great job of writing about the artists and curating and, things like that. So, we'll have ones that are more decentralized and ones that are more curated. And I think the more variety we can get, the better. But I got to jump. Feel free to continue the conversation. And thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, take care.
Anyone have any kind of final thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah. I would say, I love curators. I've gone to a couple museums that are not curated. And you know what I call those? Thrift stores, antique malls, and even antique malls are curated, right? Because when I go to a museum, it's been curated for my enjoyment, and there's been context put around the artwork so that me coming in not understanding anything about 14th century paintings, I'm able to read things, I'm able to understand them. So I think the Super Rare editorial is doing a wonderful job. So I think there's actually a need for more curation, not for more noses, snobbiness, not for snob. I think people confuse curation with snobbiness, or they go hand in hand for some people. But if we don't have curation in museums or in galleries, we are literally left with a hoarder's basement.
I sort of agree with that, but I sort of disagree, because I think that curation can introduce a lot of bias. I think that a lot of the art that I've seen that I really love hasn't necessarily been in a museum. It's just been on places like YouTube or just like online. And I don't really know how curated that space is, but yeah, I worry about that when people say, oh, we need to ramp up curation. Like with Super Rare is sort of like a walled garden at this point. I'm not sure how much I like that. Maybe it's like the quality goes up, but I think the quality can also be tied a lot to money, or the how do you say, perceived quality can be tied a lot to money.
Well, I believe the bias is the whole point of curation, because if there is no curation, you will not even recognize it as the place you want to be in. The curation is what it makes you want to be there. And I always say, if you don't like what they do, do it yourself. Build your own platform, find friends, and start it up. And then at some point, you will get to the point where you have to say no to people because you don't think they are a good fit or they're not ready yet. So no, I think that I was at a point in my career when I always say, oh yes, I typical, why don't they let me in? But in a way, it's also a way to grow, and there you will get into something at some point. And but it's always saying Super Rare is now whatever, the Louvre or something, right? There's currently an alternative. Maybe no.
A little strong. That's a little strong, Mario.
No, but it's kind of the place where right now there's no bigger one. That's what I just mean. And so, but there are tons of other places which have kind of lots of quality and really maybe even a better curation or a very nice profile, which are just as good. But everybody just looks at the prices and says, yes, like that, what Jason said, like, oh, I want to be there because there I will sell for the most, which should not be the criterion.
With something as super, it's not superficial, but with something when the first impact you have on a piece of art is you just see it and you don't know the story behind it. And there's so much art being pumped out by so much artists. There's just not enough time to figure out good art from bad art on your own. You really need the help of curators in the community. And, you know, so like when it is the Wild West, there's just so much art and all of it has the potential to be amazing. But I don't know, I can only see the surface and I really rely on the help of curators, gallerists, Super Rare, you know, their editorials to find out what's deeper than just that image on the surface. Because there's some stuff that's just gorgeous, but then when you look deeper, you're like, oh, there's nothing to this. It's very shallow. Then there's stuff that's actually, you know, like that doesn't look great. Then you look deeper and you're like, wow, this is one of the more deeper pieces of art that makes me think it's provocative. And I need a curator's help. And I think that's why I like curated spaces. And I like what Mario's saying about, you know, there should be many curated spaces with different, I guess, different focuses. I think Super Rare is doing a great job being one of the first, you know, to start it off.
Yeah, and I think that in order to combat things like bias in curation, there needs to be a layer of dialogue and discourse that's, you know, where everybody can have a say. And I think it's up to us to invent that, you know, if there's already a way of doing that that I'm not aware of, I don't know. But we need to invent that. We need to like create that. Maybe even like just conversations, because I don't think there's enough conversations. Crypto Art Week has been so delightful because, and non-isolating, because we're hearing from each other and we're actually discussing things. I think these sort of panel talks, you know, could go hand in hand with a curated show to present, you know, an alternative view of a curated show, right?
Yeah. Well, we need the people who want to write about this. I mean, this had always been the problem, like pre-crypto and generative art as well. It's kind of, you need kind of people who can qualifiedly judge this stuff, because there are not many who, I mean, the artists usually can, but they have to do their art. They can't do the critical writing. And well, yeah, my hope is too that some people like who love to write and who like love to grow an understanding will at some point come and kind of, critically review this. I mean, definitely there needs to be also critique, and nobody, I mean, should feel hurt or so if it's not always positive, but yeah, I agree, Matt.
After this week, I've thought that for some of the thought leaders in the space, there should be, you know, like Sotheby's has their institute. There should be, you know, like a week-long crypto art institute, whatever. We don't have to call it that, but, you know, just like a week long of courses or, you know, classes, something like this, but it's really meant to distill the sort of like ethos either that we want the space to have or that we're building towards. I really liked the points that all of you guys have said, and I really agree with you, Robbie, that there will be bias. I mean, there's bias in our AIs, right? We're trying to deal with that. There's just tons of bias, but what we can do, reflecting what Matt said, is what we can do is actually put our best intentions forward, right? The best of our community forward. Then at least the bias will be, you know, leaning towards something more positive than negative, or something less toxic, right? So Mario, if you have the time and or the interest and want to kick us off with what you think the first class in crypto art education should be, then
I wouldn't dare. No, I wouldn't dare.
We need the curators, we need the gallerists, we need, you know, we need all the people, right? And so, and how should they be thinking about it? I think these are really important questions, because we don't, like Robbie was saying earlier, we don't want them bringing in the old traditional art world into this. We want this to be refreshing and new, a space where it's, you know, heart-centered and, you know, innovation and support of one another are the foundations upon which we build, right? I certainly don't want to be in the old art world, but on the internet, like, that's lame, you know? That's like lame.com. Nobody
will get that too. I mean, I think that's the beauty of it, that there will be, all the forms will be possible. And I mean, I have no doubts there will be a subset which will work just like the old art world, because
we won't play with them.
People want that. So, and but I mean, they can coexist, right? In the end, it's just on the same blockchain, like we live on the same street somewhere. So, I mean, you don't have to support it, and but it will come. I mean, it's just like
it's
they take
already
their time.
coming. I mean, it's already coming with
Yep.
different platforms where fine art artists are getting into. But I mean, I see super rare still sort of like in the style of crypto art. So like what Robbie said, there is like, if you put something on like blockchain, it doesn't make it crypto. And that's why, I mean, there are like certain artworks that are excellent, but they don't belong and they don't sell.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I feel like this is great. Like we could have a sleepover, but then we got like stuff to do. So, you know, I've already eaten my popcorn. I got my green drink. I'm almost finished with. You guys have been really great. If anyone has any closing thoughts, please share it now. Yes, Matt.
I'll go. You asked what the first lesson in crypto
Yes.
art should be for people entering the space. I would say for both artists and collectors to enter this looking to be relational and not transactional, not speculative, but actually relational. Like, I don't want to say every artist is going to be willing to answer your DMs, but if you approach artists respectfully, you know, and you are patient, they want to talk about art. Artists are in the business of making of human connections, of opening our hearts to other open hearts. You know, when I was in a traditional gallery, what kind of turned me off was when I opened my heart and I was opening my heart to an open wallet and nothing more. Yeah. It was empty. It was a void.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, coming from a portrait artist, favorite thing I love doing is just getting to know the person I'm doing the portrait of. That's like so important to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would your first or second class be?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Robbie, what would your first or second class be? Matt offered his class. What would your first or second class in a kind of like crypto discourse or crypto primer? People coming into the space brand new.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure if crypto. I don't think that you should necessarily let it influence your work. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to give advice really to people who are crypto artists or who want to be crypto artists. Yes, I'm not sure how to answer this question. What is it?
Just artists. If they said, Robbie, teach a class for artists, whatever you want them to know or hope that they would, you know, take with them and make it part of their practice, fold it into their practice, what would that class be? Just the title.
I really don't know. I mean, it probably wouldn't be about crypto art. Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry.
No worries. No worries. Mario, did you want to give a?
Well, I don't know. Well, I'm always bad in giving advice. So of course, what I would say is look what you see and try definitely not to do the same. But that's not good selling advice. Like it's more like something for the future. Like because the stuff that sells is looking like the stuff that is already being sold, just a tiny bit different. Right. And the stuff that is good is its own thing and doesn't try to be any of the other things. But right now, the way this market works, or big parts of the market work, is actually you have to, I mean, that's how I understand it. You have to go with the flow. And ideally, you kind of follow whatever latest trend there is or meme or something like that. But I think if you are in for the long game, then just do what you love doing and don't try to bend yourself to something. I mean, eventually you will adapt the style, or you will pick up something from the space you're in, like from your neighbors. But well, you should first of all enjoy doing it, because like that's the whole point of it. I mean, and well, the most important point is you don't do this because you want to get rich. So this is biggest bullshit motivation. I mean, if you want to get rich, then speculate, like do whatever, do DeFi or what's it called. Don't try to
I
become
like
rich.
DeFi though. I like DeFi a lot.
Yeah, no, I love it too. But I mean, like,
I think it's DeFi.
art, that the first thing is you should enjoy the process and making it and be happy, and of course be happy if some other people like it and even buy it. But the first idea is like, oh, for how much am I going to sell this? This is, I don't know. I don't think this is kind of a strategy that really works out long term. So just, yeah, find out what makes you happy, and if it's art, then just pursue it, and don't listen to, like, don't be disappointed if people initially don't like it or don't like, I mean, not hate it, but just ignore it, because that's the usual thing. And because if people hate it, that's the best thing that you can do, because you created a reaction. If the worst thing that happens most of the time, nobody notices it.
Yeah.
So you have to be loud. But
yeah,
it always takes some time. If you're doing something unique, people will not appreciate it, and initially, and it takes lots of time to sink in, and eventually, well, if you're like me, then once people have understood it, you unfortunately are in a different place. So ideally you have stuff that you can still put up when the trend comes and says, yes, I did it first, which nobody wants to hear. So, but yeah, in the end, the recipe is try to kind of love what you do, and ideally you can make a living from it. But making a living from art, I mean, crypto art is the first time where the possibility that somebody can make a living from it is like, has risen, like, or so many more people have now the opportunity to do that. But of course, not everybody will. I mean, that's, especially with more and more people getting into the space, in the end, there's only so much attention and so many collectors. So most people will, you should be happy if somebody finds your piece good enough that they want to pay $50 for it or something. And then
I'll give an unpopular opinion and advice to artists. It's not advice that artists want to hear, but find another way of making money, because good art is very expensive. And if you're worried about selling it, then it's just your art's going to suffer, because, you know, you're chasing the trends, or you're putting stuff that's not true to your, that's a cliche. You're putting stuff that you don't want to put in there because you know it'll sell better. So alternatively, find another way to make lots of money, and then waste lots of money making art. And if you're lucky, and I'm talking not even top 1%, I'm talking like top 0.01%, might break even. And I don't know, artists don't always want to hear that, but that's what I would tell my children. That's what I do tell my children. Oh, that was a bummer. I just killed everyone. Just give it up. It's a waste of time.
Okay, now we could push some
saying
of
is like
the
being
coins.
mailman or a computer scientist, like, hey, just go into tech, make lots of money, and then at nighttime, you know, once you've burned yourself out on your 9 to 5, do what you love, living
Easy.
from 6 to 10.
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah, the best artists I knew in art school were the independently wealthy artists, without exception. And they were so good because they didn't care about selling. They'd have art shows that they didn't care if a single thing sold. It was good art.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is the real can of worms, I feel, but we'll have to save it for Crypto Basel. You have an invitation from me to all of you. Please consider yourselves on an invitation for part 2 of this, where we can dive a little deeper and perhaps actually come up with real solutions and put them out as a decree to the entire crypto art community. It's like, look, either act right or get out, you know? No, not really. But I want to thank you all very much. We've certainly enjoyed having you. If you want people to follow you on social, let's just go around and throw the socials out if that's something that you care about.
Sure.
What?
Robbie doesn't care. It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. I
I
mean,
think it says here Quasimodo. That's me everywhere. So.
wait. Pindar's cloud
Oh,
painting.
at Ben Arman, my last name.
Okay. Helena.
Glagolista.
Matt?
Twitter.
A Matt Kane artist.
Sweet. This has been a wonderful day 3 of the generative panel for Crypto Art Week. Thank you all. We'll see you in the next session. Cheers.
All right,
Yeah.
see you later.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Hey, nice
Everybody,
seeing, talking to
bye-bye.
all y'all.
Yes, yes, indeed.